I've been alluding to this in a lot of the previous discussions too. A standard question I ask is, hey, here's what the Bitcoin maxis and how they look at this stuff. And then now, since if I'm interviewing somebody who is involved in tokenization of real world assets. So what's interesting is you, if I understand correctly, used to be a Bitcoin maxi, right?
Right, yeah.
Your younger version of yourself. So can you explain maybe if you had to give the quick version to those out there who to say, hey, I used to be one of you and now, I've moved in my thinking. Can you just explain from a sympathetic perspective because you know where they're coming from?
Yeah, I think my without getting too high level, my philosophy, my view on the world, I'm a realist in a lot of ways. And so for me, I used to be much more dogmatic in my earlier years about just any things. And I used to be much more sort of gung-ho about certain ideas. I realized that a lot of the time, the extremes of any issue are, and this is not always the case, I don't think, but most of the time, anecdotally, the extremes of any issue have always tended to be wrong or sort of misguided or sort of missing the mark in my experience. And so I tried to be more of a centrist in most things. And so when I was a Bitcoin maximalist, it was because I was introduced to Bitcoin by friends of mine who basically, and for good reason, there were a lot of scams out there at the time because of the hype around the new tech. And so for good reason, there was sort of a protective or immune response from the Bitcoin community, as a lot of people like to say, to protect the Bitcoin blockchain from these scams and protect it from associations with these scams that could ultimately bring the project down. And so for that reason, I think there was a good reason for people to be skeptical of a lot of other projects back then. And that's sort of where I was coming from, where Bitcoin was really the most legitimate, the most virtuous project because the founder just sort of donated this fabulous technology to the world and left, didn't take any financial gain. The story was great. And I think it still is. The only thing I see is you can only, so out of 10,000 different layer one chains, 9,990 might be terrible in terms of for any use case. But there is a if you think about it from a perspective of, okay, there's been a lot of development in the space. There must be some things that can be applied, use cases that can be serviced by other chains that are more Turing complete programmatically than Bitcoin. And by Turing complete, I mean you're able to do more programmatic stuff on these other chains than you can on Bitcoin, at least at the moment. And so I think that it's just obvious that there are other chains that might be better for certain use cases than Bitcoin is, versus Bitcoin might be the best chain for hard money, right? And that's it, or the best chain for XYZ use case. But there might be another chain that uses a similar technology and provides a similar solution for a different use case. And it's just, it's not in competition with Bitcoin. And I think a lot of the time when people get really fired up about, well, no, your chain is it becomes sort of like a very, very dogmatic discussion. And people aren't looking objectively at, okay, what does this chain provide? Maybe it's more centralized, maybe there are less nodes, but maybe that's fine for the use case that it's purporting to service, right? Maybe it doesn't need to be super hard money. And then this chain has this going for it, and it can service this use case, and Bitcoin can stay being the king of hard money. And so that's how I sort of came to my more centrist position on chain diversity over time. I still am a hardcore Bitcoiner. I still believe in Bitcoin's long-term potential over most other chains. I think that it's a great use case for hard money that has not existed before. And I think that I don't think it's mutually exclusive with other chain use cases. That's my position right now. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, that dovetails with my, just a silver silly analogy that they come up with the printing press and they start making the Bible with the, mass producing the Bible, and that's great. But if people said, no, that's the only thing the printing press is good for, they would be kind of crazy. And so likewise, yeah, maybe it's going to be that the blockchain 100 years from now, looking back, people are still going to say the single most important thing it did was make, Bitcoin available to humanity.
Right.
That I'm open to that being the case, but it would seem kind of crazy to me to think that that technology is not going to have other applications. And like you say, maybe they won't be as good in certain dimensions as Bitcoin is for what Bitcoin does. But some of these claims I see when if I go on social media and talk about some of the things we're doing with tokenization of real world assets, and I'll get a few people just trying to blow me up like, no, if it's not Bitcoin, then just use a database. Otherwise, you either are an idiot or a grifter, and it's like, wait a minute, why could people, I could be both or
This-
neither. Yeah. So
This exists in probably every single industry field that I've ever come across personally. And depending on how, I guess, political in nature that the field can get, it becomes more charged on either end. AI is the same. So like people might say, well, AI, and people are getting up in arms about AI replacing jobs and things like that, but AI can also cure cancer potentially, right? And then in the future, and so
and throw
people
all
might
those
say,
cancer doctors out of work.
right? Yeah. So there's two sides to everything. I think there's value in keeping an open mind, but as a quote I've heard a few times, I think it's also good to not have your mind so open that your brain falls out. So I think there's a balance between the two, and I think it's just good to keep an open mind about things so that you can assimilate new information as it comes along and just progress in a person's intellectual journey just as you grow. But obviously, you need to have some level of guardrails, and I think when it goes to the extreme of either of those two things, I think you regress more than you progress over time. And I like to sort of hang in the balance.
Okay, well, that's a great place to wrap up. So thank you, folks. We've been talking with the Chief Technology Officer here at Infineo. I just like to showcase the depth of our bench just to show that why I'm so excited about the things we're doing, because our team here really knows what they're talking about. So thanks, Zuhar, for your time and your insights.
Yeah, you're no lightweight either, Bob. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And remember, keep an open mind, but not too open. And we'll catch you next time.